Twists and turns in current South Korea-China relations, all seemingly leading to worse by the day. To get a deeper understanding of their bilateral relations and the ongoing THAAD route, we have our Foreign Ministry Affairs correspondent, Connie Kim, with us in the studio. Connie, thanks for joining us here today.
Good evening, Daniel. My pleasure to be here.
Right. It feels like just a couple of years back, Korea and China reached new highs in relations, but it feels like a distant memory now that there's some significant heightened tension growing every day.
You're definitely right. Well, relations between Seoul and Beijing has reached its peak when President Park Geun-hye attended a war victory ceremony in China back in 2015. But this all came down to a downhill after Seoul and Washington decided to deploy the U.S. missile defense system THAAD to the Korean peninsula after North Korea's fourth nuclear test in January last year. Now, China has been objecting the deployment of such systems under the reasoning that the THAAD powerful radar could interfere with Chinese regional interest and national security. And soon after, the South Korean conglomerate Lotte Group approved a land swap with Seoul's defense ministry last week, enabling the base where the THAAD battery will be stationed. China's unofficial retaliatory measures started rattling South Korea first on Lotte Group, then to the travel industry, and now seemingly to other industries as well. Now, while there have been various reports that China has made the orders verbally, Beijing for now is officially denying that the government is involved. And I was able to get a hold of a professor at the China Institute of International Studies, where he echoed the government's stance and said such responses are a quick response from the Chinese public.
It's really hard to say that the strong sentiment against ROK. This is actually a response to the deployment of THAAD in ROK. I think the Chinese people are very clever to understand the significance of the meaning of the statement by the government. Generally speaking, I don't think the Chinese government will give any official announcement to take sanction against the ROK, but the people will voluntarily give their response to the decision made by the ROK government.
Well, it must have been a grave challenge finding someone to acknowledge to our interview, especially someone from China there.
Right.
Now, the situation shows no signs of improving, especially with China adamant on their stance, although Seoul tries to explain this is a necessary defensive measure for South Korea. What are the prospects looking ahead for future bilateral ties between Seoul and Beijing?
Well, actually, in today's foreign ministry briefing held by China, it actually escalated its warning on South Korea as both allies, Seoul and Washington, began installing parts of THAAD to the Korean peninsula. Beijing's foreign ministry said that it solemnly objects Seoul and Washington's THAAD deployment and will resolutely take necessary actions in order to safeguard its security interests, and added any consequences to follow the necessary actions should be borne by the two allies. And as to the latest in the South Korean government's response to China's apparent sanctions, Seoul's foreign ministry in a regular press briefing said the government will support companies that have been affected by China's measures, and that it is considering raising the issue on the international stage and respond legally if necessary to violations of the WTO and Seoul-Beijing Free Trade Agreement. And most importantly, Seoul reiterated its stance that the primary reason for the THAAD deployment is the North's missile threats.
Seoul and Washington's decision came as North Korea's nuclear and missile threats exist, are getting larger, and are imminent. There is no other purpose in this decision, as it came in line with the Seoul-Washington alliance and according to priority.
While standing consistent, there are voices that Seoul and Washington must use diverse channels to explain the necessity of the THAAD deployment and calm Beijing's anger.
I think that the United States and South Korea could engage with China to explain how THAAD actually works, and then to allow for some transparency so China can be assured that THAAD would not be detrimental to China.
And in fact, U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson and some other senior American officials are reportedly planning on a trip to South Korea and China this month to act as a mediator in the heightened THAAD row, Daniel.
Right, let's take a look at the retaliatory action, the economic sanctions that China is making. They really know how to go all out when they turn into a vengeful mode. How serious is it, and how hard is it hurting Korea's economy and the businesses?
Well, first of all, China's sanctions have affected Lotte Group the most so far, but the anti-South Korean sentiment doesn't look like it's going to stop there. Korean food and cosmetics are going to be the next stop, and Beijing also moved to hit Seoul with a second ban on charter flights, which could seriously curb the country's tourism revenue. First, for a closer look, let's turn to our Oh Jung-hee's report.
This is a Korean dumpling that's become popular in China with sales of almost $130 million last year. Now, there's growing speculation that food products like this could be the next target for China's retaliatory actions against Seoul's deployment of the THAAD missile defense system. But experts say China won't be imposing tariffs. Instead, it'll impose stricter sanitation tests and stronger quarantine controls on food and cosmetics. That's because those items are more easily replaceable than things like smartphone or car components, whose absence would do greater harm to the Chinese economy.
China's sanctions are likely to target goods that will have little impact on the Chinese economy. For example, consumer goods like food or cosmetics and services.
Korea's cosmetics companies will also have to be prepared. The Korea Trade Investment Promotion Agency, or KOTRA, has reported, starting this month, Chinese companies that import cosmetics from other countries must register themselves with quality control authorities and report on specific product information. The Chinese authorities say the system is being implemented to strengthen safety controls and facilitate quick recalls of bad products. But there are concerns in Korea that it's an unofficial sanction on Korean cosmetics. In another sign of Beijing's discontent, Chinese authorities have once again banned Korean airlines from running charter flights from China to Korea. Only flights by Korean airlines were banned. This is the second such ban after Asiana Airlines, Jeju Air, and Jin Air were banned from operating charter flights in January. An estimated 70,000 Chinese tourists were scheduled to fly to Korea on charter flights this year, but it's not yet known whether the flights will be allowed. The measure is expected to significantly curtail the number of Chinese tourists to Korea in combination with China's recent ban on sales of all Korea tour packages. The Chinese government's retaliatory actions against the THAAD deployment appear to be zeroing in on specific industries, from food and cosmetics to entertainment, travel, and tourism, that will have a huge economic impact on Korea. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
Well, China seems to be not in exactly a friendly mood to listen to opinions and facts, but hopefully some U.S. officials' visit could help put some sense into them, explain that this should not be a security concern for Beijing at all. Let's look at the current situation. Let's see how we can roll with the punches in terms of the retaliation from China at the moment. I understand we have some case studies that shows there are ways to minimize the blow.
Right. If we look at history, it's not the first time China has slapped sanctions on other nations over their sovereign decision. Now, there was a case when Beijing banned exports of rare earth minerals to Japan, and sales of Japanese automobiles were down to half in China, all following Tokyo's announcement to nationalize the Senkaku Islands in the East China Sea. And then there is the Taiwan case, where Beijing limited travel to China after Taiwan's new president, Tsai Ing-wen, didn't sign off on the 1992 consensus acknowledging the so-called One China policy. Now, let's take a look at how they in turn responded. Japan relocated production facilities in China to Thailand and Indonesia, sued China at the WTO, and diversified imports of rare earth materials from India and Vietnam. And also, sales of Japanese automobiles started recovering a year after, with the number of Chinese travelers to Japan peaking at 6.3 million in 2016. And looking at the case for Taiwan, it expanded its visa-free entry policy to other nationalities, securing even more travelers from Vietnam and the Philippines. So while Chinese tourists decreased, Taiwan welcomed the largest number of international tourists in 2016 at 10.7 million.
I think that the Chinese government will think maybe tougher sanctions vis-à-vis South Korea as time goes by. And actually, if when it approached actual deployment of THAAD, we can expect much tougher sanctions, much wider sanctions. So maybe we have to think about alternative markets like Southeast Asian countries and also India and some other countries. So Japan has done it, Taiwanese has done it. So why South Korea? So we can do it, but it will take some time. So we have to have our own very good portfolio in terms of economy and trade.
And experts are expecting the sanctions to prolong for at least a year, so they suggest Seoul must look after other East Asian markets to target the service and commodity industries, sectors that have been hit hard by China's sanctions so far. And there are some analysts who say China won't be able to restrict imports of South Korean intermediary and capital goods that take up to 90% of Seoul's exports to Beijing. Now, Seoul's stronghold IT, semiconductor, and chemical industries have not been affected yet, but experts caution that the country must diversify portfolios and seek for other markets to offset potential damage caused by Beijing's measures.
Well, South Korea does have a good track record of rising to the occasion when we have our backs to the wall. Hopefully this will be another successful case study to go in the record books. And of course, hopefully China will learn that this unconstructive path will not lead to anywhere anytime soon.
You're right.
Thank you so much for taking time from the Foreign Ministry to be here with us today, Connie Kim.
Always my pleasure.